The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Jack Barazzini. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Dom. How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Thomas Sanherho. Hi, Thomas.
It's nice to be here.
Excellent. So I just want to start with a little tale, a technology tale, some of my technology woes that have turned out well. I have an Apple iPad Pro, brand new. I just got it last fall, and it's the latest model until Apple releases a new one later this month, probably, and makes me want to buy that. But until then, this is the latest model, and it's been great. I love it. It's got that USB-C port on it that is supposed to be so much better, but requires that I have different cables from everything else. But it is what it is. But over the last few weeks, I've started having this problem where I'd plug it in and it wouldn't start charging, and then I have to jiggle the cable, and it would start charging, and then I realized that some of my other cables weren't charging it, and then I would plug it into different ports, different cables. Not it was very inconsistent. I know that if you ever have this happen with your phone, gets either a toothpick, a wooden toothpick. Don't use this cotton swab because that's counterintuitive, or possibly some compressed air, but a wooden toothpick is better. And see if there's lint in the port. That's a big one. You with the phone in your pocket, it's always going to collect lint in that port.
Right.
And sometimes that'll get in there and keep the cable from making a good connection. But I don't carry my iPad in my pocket, so that I knew it wasn't going to be lint from my pocket. But I checked it anyway. It wasn't working. It wasn't a deal. And then a few days ago, it wouldn't charge at all, no matter what cables I used, no matter what what I did with it, reboot, all that sort of stuff, wouldn't fix it. So I knew it was time. I had to make an Apple Store Genius Bar appointment. I took it in because it's still under warranty. It's not even. I have Apple Care, but it's still warranty.
I was gonna say it's got to be like if it's that new, it's got to be under warranty still.
Yeah,
right?
It still is. So I made my Genius Bar appointment. I went in this morning. So good. I just love that Apple Store Genius Bar experience. My appointment was 11:40. I got there at 11:30. They said to have a seat over here, so they'll be with you in about 15 minutes. 2 minutes later, the guy walks up, which was awesome. And then he takes me seriously. I tell him all the troubleshooting steps I took so that he knows I'm serious, that I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just
right.
I'm not the lady who calls the pencil the writing stick, the lady next to me. But so we try it out. He gets out their charging brick and their cable, and they plug it in, and guess what happens?
It charges.
It starts charging. I'm like, no. He's like, well, did you bring your Apple cable with you so we could replace it under warranty? I'm like, no, I don't think it is. So he went to go away to get something else. I forget what it was. And so I got out from my bag one of the cables that didn't work before. And when he came back, I said, can you try this cable with your charging brick? He's like, sure. Plugged it in, didn't work. And then he got another iPad, plugged it into that. It did work. It's not the cable. And then we plugged his Apple cable back in. Didn't work. So my guess is, and we guessed it together, is that there was a broken solder point or something in the port.
Yeah.
That was intermittent and then finally just gave. So, but the nice thing is he's like, okay, sure. Goes out back, gets a new iPad, brings it out, does the paperwork, scans the barcode, whatever, hands it to me. I take it home, and it's just that it's the long but easy reset up process. You have to download all the apps again, all that sort of stuff. But it's so much better than it used to be. That whole process. Yeah,
well, I think they really value the fact that they can interchange the whole object. And still, they can fix that. You can't fix it, but they can take that piece and just...
Yeah, I had that happened with when I switched back to iPhone after having Android for a couple of years, and I logged into my iCloud account, everything synced right back up, even though it'd been like 3 years since I'd had an iPhone. So they make it really easy. It's
so much easier. And with 1Password integrated into the OS now, it's just, once 1Password is downloaded, the app, I can, logging into all my Google accounts and all my other accounts is just, It's right there. It's so much better.
Yeah, well, I started doing the whole phone reset once a month or so.
Oh wow!
And and it's been great. It's been great for my phone. My phone is staying really really top notch, and it's charging really well. It's keeping battery really well, and I wouldn't be able to do that if it weren't for the fact that it was so easy to just say, okay, go ahead and re-download everything. Yep, there we go. Yeah. We're good.
And the Apple, the Genius Bar experience has always been so good. I remember years ago, like more than 10 years ago, I had an iPod. I think it was an iPod that it was like an iPod Touch. That an update came out. I went to update it, and it bricked the iPod just halfway through. And so I went to the Genius Bar. I walked up to the guy, and all I said was, I was updating it. And then it stopped, and now it won't respond. He's like, okay, takes it, does a few things. I never say another word to the guy. Does a bunch of things, reaches under the desk, pulls out a new iPod Touch, does a few more things, and says, "Here you go." And that's it. That was the extent of all I had to do. I didn't have to argue with him, cajole him, explain to him, try to convince him. Nope, it's just we took care of it. This is why I pay a little more for Apple.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's one of the reasons. So that's my tale of woe that has a happy ending. So just I thought I'd start with that. So let's talk about some of the other news this week that's more important than my iPad getting fixed. There was a very interesting Catholic tech news. We don't often have specifically Catholic tech news, but this is real Catholic technology news. There was a meeting at the Vatican between the Pontifical Academy for Life and specifically the cardinal in charge, Cardinal Paglia, and some heads of big tech companies, the heads of Microsoft, IBM, and FAO, which is that a Europe? I didn't see what that was. Is that a European?
I think it's the European Commission. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they had this meeting where they talked about AI and ethical AI, and they signed a non-binding sort of agreement. I mean, to say they signed a thing, they just had this statement of agreement of principles that AI, any rules that are developed to govern AI, the ethical use of artificial intelligence, has to take into account people, particularly the weak, the underprivileged, as well as the environment. And that's that. It's interesting. I mean, it doesn't really affect real regulations, but to have these big tech companies and the Vatican making a big splash on this is somewhat significant. So, what do you guys think of this agreement they came to in this event, and even just the topic of ethical use of AI under Catholic moral principles? What do you think of this, Thomas?
I think it's fantastic. I like the idea that we're pushing the preferential option for the poor kind of mentality into the digital age and really getting out in the forefront, because there's a lot of people that are concerned about AI ethics, but not the ethical use of AI. And there's a very small difference there, but it's a very important one, because I think a lot of people are thinking so far ahead and thinking, oh, what happens when AI becomes sentient, and like, is it going to have morals? And don't worry so much about that.
That's way down the road.
How we're using it. Yeah, that's 100 years from now, something like that. But we need to think about right now. We already have these machine learning algorithms that are potentially dangerous because of baked-in bias. And if we don't start now thinking about how to remove that baked-in bias, it's not going to be removed, and it's just going to perpetuate.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I think people, when they think about the ethical use of AI and that sort of stuff, they're thinking Skynet. They're thinking the robots rising up to kill us. That's not happening, and it's even debatable whether we could ever get to the point where AI could be self-aware like that.
Yeah, this is addressing more the real issue of people using AI unethically rather than AI becoming unethical on its own.
Right.
Exactly.
Could you give some examples of ways that AI could be used unethically? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
I know one thing that I've heard about is I think we talked about this a while ago, but there's a police database that there's a company, I cannot remember the name of them
Clear
off the top of my head. Yeah, Clear AI. And there's an issue with facial recognition and minorities where because of the darker skin tone, it can be harder to differentiate. So that would be an example of where you have to be aware of the limitations of the technology and the bias that could come up if you're using something like that.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And then if you're talking about the legal system still, if you're looking at statistics, the problem with statistics is that largely the minority groups are overrepresented in prison systems in the United States. And so if you have an AI that you set loose on cases and you just automatically trust its judgment, and it's only making judgments based on statistics, it's going to follow those same statistics of, well, this is a minority person. Obviously, they must have committed the crime because in the past, this has been the same way that that has happened.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, we've talked before about the problem is in the data sets. Where do these data sets come from that they're using to train these machine learning algorithms? I think this is why a lot of people say machine learning as opposed to AI because people think Skynet when they hear AI.
Exactly.
But machine learning algorithms and AI today are relatively the same thing. But this is the problem: these machine learning algorithms have to be trained, and the training, everything depends on what data set you're given it. And who's doing the training. We've talked before about how so many of the people doing the training are from a particular place. They're all from, Silicon Valley. They're all very similar background. They're of relatively similar socioeconomic status, very similar educational background, outlook on life, political leaning in many cases, and that all tends to bias the system in a certain direction. That could be a problem.
Yeah, and you bring that bias in, and the great thing is that there is the potential to use these systems to overcome those biases and to try and allow them to make decisions that are outside of the bounds of our particular proclivities. But we have to be intentional about that, and I think it's good that we're talking about an ethical use of AI. And not, and that's, I was really, when I saw the link, I was like, oh no, I hope this isn't what I think it is. And it wasn't like how do we save the machine's soul? Because that's not, it's not relevant. And I should know better when I'm looking at a Catholic source, but that's, and I think it's important for us to make sure that that's where we're leaning is how are we as humans using this tool to improve the human state?
Right. I also appreciated that it was not saying AI is bad, period, don't use it. Because that's the other direction you could go with that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And I should say that, the fact that we have implicit bias, that we have a particular viewpoint is not bad from the, it doesn't poison the whole thing. As long as we're aware of our potential biases and try to compensate for them, that can help. And so, if these big companies are aware, like, I'm not just making this technology for use in New York, the greater New York population. I'm making this stuff for people in Sao Paulo and people who live in rural parts of Africa. And this technology has to work equally well for people everywhere, from top to bottom on the socioeconomic scale. From all these things you have to be aware of to make sure that it's fair, that it treats people with the dignity and individuality that they are due, which is key from a Catholic the social gospel context.
Right, and we need to learn how to have context-based data analysis rather than just here's all the data, whatever it says is the truth. The context is really important in that.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. I hope that there's more talk about this in Catholic circles. There needs to be. This is one of the reasons why this podcast exists, and I want there to be more. I'd love it if there were more Catholic technology podcasts, because this is precisely why we're here, because we want to talk about these intersections between this technology, which more and more I don't want to say rules our life, but it certainly underpins so much of our lives. And we need to connect that with our Catholic moral principles and our Catholic social moral principles too. That we need to talk about it and figure this out and have a voice in the conversation so that we can influence where this goes. And that's that's why I'm glad the Vatican's doing this. I find it interesting that it's the Pontifical Academy for Life that is taking the Vatican's point on this. It's an interesting place for that to be.
Well, it's a good use, because if you think about where these kind of things might happen, especially in the medical field with the way it is right now, a cost-benefit analysis of keeping someone alive is a very, very dangerous thing when someone's at the, trying to make end-of-life decisions. And, the machine is deciding, well, it's going to cost us this many millions of dollars to keep this person alive. It's really not worth it because they only have this long left to live. That's not okay. That's not how I want medical decisions made for me when I get to that age.
Right. So this document that they signed had a list of 6 principles for fundamental good in AI. And I want to name them. So the first is transparency. It says, in principle, AI systems must be explainable. So it has to be understandable by maybe well-educated people, but has to be open, and people have to understand what's going on with it. Inclusion, the needs of all human beings must be taken into consideration so that everyone can benefit and all individuals can be offered the best possible conditions to express themselves and develop. Right? This has to be something not just for the wealthy or those who have special access. Number 3, responsibility. Those who design and deploy the use of AI must proceed with responsibility and transparency. So the people doing this have to be accountable.
Right.
Right.
For impartiality, do not create or act according to bias, thus safeguarding fairness and human dignity. We just talked about that. 5, reliability. AI systems must be able to work reliably. Yes, please. And 6, security and privacy. AI systems must work securely and respect the privacy of users. So these are good principles, and frankly, these are good principles for all technology, not just AI. So I agree with that.
Right. I think it's just doubly important because the potential of AI to be super powerful is there, where with a lot of other technologies, it's more isolated.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll have links to some stories on this, as well as to this document itself. It's available on the Pontifical Academy for Life's website. So it's called the Rome Call for AI Ethics. So it's very interesting. Anything else you guys want to say about this particular topic?
I'm just glad the Vatican's looking at this.
Yeah,
definitely.
Me too.
And I think it's something that it makes an interesting space for us to start talking about ethics in software generally, in a way that we haven't really been doing. Not out of I don't even think it's even out of fear or out of a sense of slow moving, but it's just we haven't really had as much of a reason to, and it's been such a quick rise of technology that it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around. How do we talk about ethics? And now that we're really seeing the fallout of big data, we're seeing the fallout of all of these security issues that are coming up. Okay, somebody needs to step forward and say, hey, you can do these things with technology, but that doesn't mean that you should.
Right.
I think some of the reason why this is starting to get more into the conversation in Catholic circles is we're starting to see people at higher levels within the Vatican, within the church, who are digital natives, people who grew up with this stuff, and for whom it's not a foreign world, but it's something that they're somewhat familiar with. And I think it behooves the Vatican to continue to bring in people who know this stuff, who are familiar with it, to help continue this conversation on both sides. So again, I applaud that.
It'll be interesting to see how this intersects with just war theory when it comes to cyber war.
Oh yeah, that should be interesting. I think I've heard the. I have a recollection. I don't want to speak too much out of turn, but of someone from the Vatican, and I don't know if it was the Pope, saying things like that war should never be prosecuted by an AI. Like the life or death decision should never be made by an algorithm, which is true. If it comes down to it, that you have to fight a war, you have to make the decision to kill, that decision has to be made by a human being and not by a machine. I think that's clearly something but it's an interesting moral perspective we need to preserve and have a voice in when that comes up, because it will.
No dead hand.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. All right. So let's talk about our second topic of the podcast, and this is actually, it's interesting because this is also relates to multiple voices from different viewpoints having a part of the conversation. And this is a court decision concerns YouTube. And I'm just pulling up my note here, which says that a Seattle appeals court recently ruled just last week that YouTube, Seattle, it's a San Francisco Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is considered to be a fairly liberal court. So whether the Supreme Court would follow along, that's another question, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals dismissed a lawsuit by a YouTube content creator, Prager University, and Dennis Prager. We may have heard of them. They create YouTube videos that express a conservative point of view, and they're educational videos about various topics. Well, they sued YouTube and Google back in 2017, saying that their First Amendment rights were being violated because many of their videos, especially those on abortion, gun rights, Islam, and terrorism, were being restricted and demonetized. And they held that was a violation of their rights. Well, the court said that YouTube is not a public forum, and it's not a state actor, it's not the government, and therefore it can't be held to the First Amendment standard. On the one hand, that Google says, hey, if you were to hold us as a public forum, then every website would be essentially run crazy. We could never take down any video because we'd be a public forum, and that any video that wasn't illegal. So stuff that was just awful, gross, or whatever, we'd have to let it run because we're a public forum. So that would be bad. On the other hand, this seems to give them the ability to remove content or hide content that they disagree with from a particular partisan point of view. What do you guys think of this decision?
I think that when you're a company as big as Google, with as much reach as Google, you don't really get to decide that, and First Amendment rights should apply to content on your platform.
Yeah.
Because at what point are they just controlling everything, which they kind of do now? If you're not on YouTube, you are not really going to have a voice. I mean, I guess you could use Vimeo, but then Vimeo could decide the same thing.
Right.
And in principle, I agree that companies shouldn't be forced to host videos that they don't want to or bake cakes for people they don't want to. But the bias here is very clear. If this had been a left-leaning YouTube channel, this would not have been a problem.
I don't know about that, because I think that there are a lot of YouTubers that are complaining about the same thing from the entire spectrum.
Yeah, and I know that
YouTube seems to be getting really happy with the takedowns and demonetization.
Right, and there's a YouTube channel called I think they're Time Ghost History, and they do this thing where they do first they were doing World War I, and now they do World War II, and they go through week by week and follow the war in real time. And they've been demonetized because they have photos of Nazi things in their videos, and they're not endorsing that ideology at all, but because it's there, they've been demonetized. So I think YouTube is kind of just hitting everything with a blunt hammer rather than actually looking at the content in the videos.
Well, the argument is that, YouTube is also removing things like videos that promote fake, sort of the fake news, the stuff that is meant to influence the election by spreading rumors or innuendo or just flat out falsehoods. And, in 2016, people were yelling at the social media and the big tech companies, you should be, helping people to avoid this. And hiding, now they're hiding flat earth stuff because, that's bad for people to hear about. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these and I'm weighing it. I'm thinking, which is worse, to have everything, including viewpoint stuff that is relatively mainstream point of view, pro-life. I think that's relatively mainstream. 48% of the country, 50% of the country holds that point of view. that's being, demonetized or impeded at least, that worries me.
Well, I think it's also one thing to consider, like how that topic is being presented, because there is a way to present that topic that is culturally normal, that is indicative of everything about that topic. That's fine. And then there's the, let's post a large banner of an aborted fetus and start having this really big conversation about it. Those are two different things. And one, I think, is justifiable. The other one is not. And
I would agree.
To be fair, I'm fairly familiar with Prager's videos, and they are pretty good. They are not inflammatory. They are
right. Yeah, I'm not talking specific. In this case, I know that it does actually fall in that kind of like
you're right.
open forum kind of thing. But there are things that still deserve to be taken down, even if they are, even if the concept behind them is culturally sound. The presentation is definitely incendiary.
I've reported stuff on Facebook before for stuff like that, because even if I agree with the point of what you're saying, I do not think the way you're saying it is helpful or
appropriate
charitable or decent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how much of our reaction to this has to do with what we've heard of Google's internal culture, its the viewpoint of many of its employees and managers, which is left leaning. And so we don't look at it and say, they do this to everybody, but we say, we know the point of view, we've seen it, we've heard reports of employees there who have said they want to suppress right-wing or conservative viewpoints, and then we see it being done. I think that makes it a little different than the other stuff that seems more justifiable. I think in the absence of that other evidence, I think we probably would be a little more willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But in this case, I think a lot of people are saying, well, this goes right along with what we see is that there's an implicit bias in some of these big tech companies where we've heard that they're biased against us, and so we're more likely to feel censored.
Right.
Well, and I think you run into the problem here too, like Jack was saying initially, that there is such a reach. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, and that's only behind Google itself. So it's kind of it's a catch-22, because and I think it's interesting though too to think about the state's argument here that this isn't an open forum, but there's no alternative. There's no alternative state open forum that is equal to or that even exists, let alone anywhere near the size and status of YouTube.
Right. There isn't a public park you can walk into as opposed to private property. This is a whole different area that wasn't envisioned when the Constitution was written. I mean, the idea that anyone can set up a website and I could get my views out, but if the problem is if people can't find the website, then it may as well not exist. And when one company pretty much controls access, because even search engines like DuckDuckGo, the reality is their back end is they're just doing anonymized searches through Google. Yeah. I mean, Google controls it. The Bing and Google, that's about it. For 99% of it.
And even if you circumvent YouTube or Google hosting your things, GoDaddy or whoever you're hosting could still decide your site is not kosher and take it down.
Right.
Like you're still relying on somebody else. Like unless you want to set up your own server farm in your garage and host your website that way. And even then you have the ISP you got to go through.
Right. I was going to say the ISP is another gatekeeper there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There is no protected public forum situation. It's interesting. There are municipalities where the ISP is a government run utility, and thus you actually do have some protection. So it's interesting in those cases. But even then, you've got a server with an IP address, but domain names are handed out by private entities, all that sort of stuff. You could be on the dark web all you want, I suppose, but it doesn't mean that you have a free speech in that sense. So I think it's a situation where it's not that our Constitution or our laws necessarily need to catch up, but we need to be able to think about these things in a new way, looking at the reality of the situation we're in, where we're effectively at the mercy of these very big companies. We are, it's almost a technocracy that we're living in, or could become one.
It very much really is. I mean, it really is moving that direction where the information is controlled by these organizations, and it's a difficult place to be in as a person who's very much in the laissez-faire, let it be situation, because there's no response to this. Like, what are we all going to do? Blacklist YouTube?
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It should. I don't think that would be a bad response. I think that, the more we see Google controlling these kind of things, the more people should be moving away from using Google as a search engine. They should be moving away from using YouTube as a platform to post to. But again, what are the alternatives? Yeah.
Right.
It's like Chesterton says about the problem with capitalism is that there's too few capitalists.
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, I could post all of our podcasts go onto YouTube as audio only videos. I could post them all on LiveLeak or Vimeo, but that just means nobody's going to see them there.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly.
You have to go where the people are, and that the people, and it's the same. It's the Facebook problem. We've had Google Plus, which go from one giant corporation to another, or MeWe or Mastodon instead of Twitter. But unless people go there, then there's no point in it. Then you're standing in a room by yourself talking to the walls. You've got to be where everyone else is, and until people decide to go somewhere else, it isn't going to happen. So, yeah, this is a tricky situation, and I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball to say this is the solution or this is where it's going to go. But I do worry about when I see things like this, it makes me worry a little bit about if there ever comes a time when people decide this particular kind of viewpoint that I hold, Christian viewpoint or other, is not acceptable in public, and we're not far from that on some things.
Yeah.
To be silenced. I mean, frankly, I think we're there. There are some things I won't say online, things I believe deeply, but I won't say in public places because I'm afraid of being censored and removed, canceled, essentially, the cancel culture. So this bears watching. I'm sure we're not done. Maybe this will go before the Supreme Court. They haven't said what they plan to do, but it's possible they will. I'm sure if regulation is written by Congress, it's going to be heavily lobbied by the big companies. So I'm not sure how that would work out.
Yeah, I just wonder what will they be able to do ultimately.
Right. So speaking of signing away your rights to corporations and them having all the rights, let's have some more dystopian information. Apparently, there's some news about how every time we click agree on those user agreements, those terms of service, we're signing away our right to sue. We've always known that. Like, those clauses have always been in the various software packages and stuff, and there's always this arbitration clause. By using our software, by clicking this button, by doing this, you are agreeing to binding arbitration instead of litigation. Like, so if something goes wrong, you agree to, instead of expensive lawsuits, expensive class action lawsuits, this is what they're trying to stop, instead they can make you go before an arbitrator, and that makes it much easier for a big company to send in a lawyer and to win the day. So that's always been the case. But now there's been some talk, including this 2019 study by a law professor at Loyola University New Orleans, who's found that we are having many more of these binding agreements where we give up our rights to sue, our access to the courts. I think they said something like it covers more than 60% of U.S. retail e-commerce sales or agreements. That's astounding. So, every time you use Amazon, Uber, Walmart, Costco, when you buy a car, when you do any of these transactions where you make these agreements, you're giving up your rights little by little. What do you guys think of this? Something to be concerned about?
I wonder how enforceable it even is.
Yeah. I'm in that same boat too. Like the end user license agreements and just any license agreements you go into, it's assuming common transactional process, right? So if I say I'm not going to hold Uber liable for something that happens to me when I'm riding Uber, but then I get in the Uber car and the driver turns out to be a maniac and tries to kidnap me, and there was they knew this was a problem, and there are situations where it's just that's not going to hold. It doesn't matter that they had me sign an agreement. They're still going to be responsible for that situation.
Right.
Well, that's the problem that Uber has had. Like, they've had bad things happen with their drivers, and I think as a result of it, they've had to change some of their policies with how those cases are handled.
Right. And, from their point of view, they say, look, we've got thousands of drivers. We do our best to screen them, but there's only so much we can do, et cetera, et cetera. What it comes down to, though, is anybody can sue anyone for anything, no matter what you've agreed to. Like, you can still send in a lawyer. It just means that your lawyer has a bit, steeper path to trod to get to the goal that you have. And some people point out, look, class action lawsuits are kind of a problem in our legal system right now. Everybody's suing over the stupidest reasons. Oh, my kid bought a game on the iPhone and now and we didn't like it, and so now we're filing a $50 million class action lawsuit. I mean, it's just ridiculous things sometimes. And the people who mainly benefit from class action lawsuits are the lawyers, right?
Right.
Well, when you get those little cards in the mail, like you may be a beneficiary, what they don't tell you is like up to like 40% of the millions of dollars are going to the law firms.
Yeah.
Like the actual class of the class action are getting a pittance of the whole thing. And I mean, you look at it like, oh, I get a $5 coupon, to buy more of your stuff. It's like it's actually a sales agreement. It's like a sales tactic in some cases. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm with you. I think in a lot of these cases, you could still sue, and in some ways, arbitration does level the playing field a little bit, and it's not you have to go to court and convince a jury. It's an arbitrator who's trained to mediate. So
the issue there is still going to be whoever has more money wins usually.
Right. All right. So here's another headline that will help us fight back against big tech. New York Times had an article, activate this bracelet of silence, and Alexa, or your Amazon Echo, I don't want to say it, can't eavesdrop. If I had it right now, I could say it and it wouldn't hear
Voldemort.
Me. Yes, the digital personal assistant that will not be named. These two computer science professors at the University of Chicago, a married couple, he wanted to buy an Echo, and she didn't want it in the house. I've had that argument. I won. That one I won. But the compromise was that they created, because they're computer science professors, they created this device that, when activated, blankets the room with ultrasonic noise that jams the Echo and anything else with microphones that are in the vicinity. And they call it the bracelet of silence. They have a picture of their prototype. The thing is this giant ring. Looks awesome. It looks like an alien bracelet handcuff. It's just kind of crazy.
Fantastic.
Yes,
I totally want one. I would wear it.
I want one on each wrist.
Well, the interesting
power
thing,
gauntlets.
Yeah. Well, some people will say, well, why don't you just silence? There's a button. You could tell it to not listen to what we're saying for now. But or don't use the wake word. And of course, we've heard many studies that show, these devices activate on their own by mishearing the wake word, so many 100 times a day. And, you can't always control it when you go in other places. And so they talk about maybe you could wear this out, or when you go into someone else's home, who has an Echo. But then that raises some interesting ethical questions. Do you have the right to jam other people's devices in their home? So what do you think? What do you think of this whole question?
I like this, honestly. I don't have an Echo or anything, but I still have my iPhone, which I know is listening to me right now.
Yep.
And that's the thing with microphones is, like, even if there's an off switch, it's always on When we prepare computers for classified environments, you have to physically open up the laptop and disconnect the microphone and the camera, because unless you're physically disconnecting it, you cannot be sure it's off. Yep. So I think it's a good idea. I don't know. I think if you're going over to someone's house, it's, you respect their house rules. If they want to use their Alexa, you let them use their Alexa. But if you want to have that in your house, or even if you're just walking out in public, so it's not picking up what you're saying, I think that's fine.
I agree with that. I think it's a courtesy issue at that point. You need to ask the person that you're around. But then it goes to public places. Like how does this extend to public places? Like if I'm a teacher and I have this kind of thing on my wrist and I'm in a classroom, that's my classroom. So, there's a reasonable expectation there. But then if I just walk down the hall, or if I go and get on go to a train station or something like that and still have the bracelet on, not even really thinking about it, I'm preventing people from being able to use their technology.
Yeah, I'm sitting there going.
It depends on the range.
Yeah. I'm standing next to you on the train, going, "Why won't my phone play my music?"
And then but then there's me with the other problem. Like my phone listens to me way too much, and I'm not even sure how it picks up on some of the stuff I say, and
right.
Just brings up the assistant and starts trying to check in with me.
Oh, I loved that today. I was trying to answer the phone, and I'm like, "Hello," and I'm hearing the Siri on my watch going, "Good afternoon." I'm like, "Not you idiot. I'm trying to talk to my mother who's calling me." Yeah. That one bugs me, is the watch thing, the lift to talk. So it's sort of a cone of silence a bubble of silence we can put around us. Maybe. I think that's an interesting idea, that if you could have a personalized bubble of silence around you where you cannot be listened to. I mean, it's not that different from these other things that people are doing, where you can wear like a special kind of necklace or a hat that blinds cameras, like especially facial recognition cameras, when they're trying to look at your face. It's an interesting idea, in a world where we're surrounded by things trying to hear us and see us. Maybe we have a right to be anonymous in private. Right. So that's an interesting question.
There was an actor recently, or a musician, who was wearing a piece of cloth that reflected flashes much more brightly than they should have, and so all you could see was the cloth being reflected. I loved that. I thought that was a really cool use of technology, and I think I think stealth technology is something that we need to start thinking more about as a society, and how we're going to use it and how we're going to deal with it as as members of a society, and whether or not, if someone wants to be left alone, they should be able to be left alone.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to just remove yourself.
So here's another way where we can fight back. This is our last headline for the episode. This is from Gizmodo. They ask, "Hate those robocalls? This service lets you sue them for up to $3,000 per annoying call." So do you want to get $3,000 every time you get a robocall? Well, I wish it was that easy.
If you can track them down, more power to you.
Well, here's how it works. The service is called Robo Revenge, and it's a service from a company called Do Not Pay, which is a robot lawyer app that lets consumers do things like appeal parking tickets and cancel services and subscriptions and that sort of stuff. But what Robo Revenge does is it adds you to the federal Do Not Call registry that's run by the Federal Trade Commission. And that's a key step, because once you're on there, you're not supposed to get these calls. Then here's the tricky part. They give you a virtual burner credit card that's issued by Do Not Pay. Okay, it's issued in Do Not Pay's name, and you provide it when you receive the robocall. So you have to engage in a financial transaction with the robocaller. That's the key. They have to commit a crime in order for them to be traced, right? Because that's what happens is Robo Revenge uses the transaction information from the credit card transaction to track down the robocaller, the contact information for the people behind it, and then guides you through the process to sue them. And you can sue for up to $3,000 under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, because that's a violation of the Do Not Call registry. And they generate the demand letters and the court documents that help you with your claim. Now, they don't do the suing for you. You have to, they provide you with all the steps, but you have to follow through. So you really have to be really motivated to do this. And there's probably a handful of people out there who have the time, the energy, and the passion to follow through.
I don't know, man. I'm getting close with these calls that I'm getting that are like they ask for someone else's name, and then as soon as I say no, that's not them, they launch into this sales pitch. And I'm like,
oh yes,
fell for it again. Darn it!
I mean, if you're making $3,000 a call, that with the number of calls I'm getting, I could just turn that into my full-time job.
Well,
this is true.
I'm thinking there might be people out there who could do that. They've got some free time. They work from home. They're not really all that busy. Otherwise, maybe that could be a part-time job for someone.
It's a new fantastic retired person's gig. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, would it make a dent in it? I don't know. Maybe not. But it would make you feel better and maybe get you some cash on the side. I don't think it's for me. The whole thing about engaging in a commercial transaction using somebody else's credit card, issued from the do not pay. I'm sure it's all on the legal up and up. I just that I feel like that puts me into certain obligations and connections that I'd be worried about down the road.
Yeah,
but then you're basically just working for do not pay. Yeah,
exactly. But I applaud the concept and the desire behind it, which is to get back at the robocallers. So I agree with that. One simple step that if you're an iPhone user you can do, there is a setting in the settings app under the iPhone setting. You can say silence unknown callers. So if the person calling you is not in your contact book, your address book, your contacts, it won't ring the phone. It will still register as a call. It'll show up as a missed call and that sort of thing, but it won't ring the phone and bug you with it. So it's a small thing you can do to get some of the annoyance away.
Yeah, it really helps.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on, and we've had some fun with that, and then let's talk about our picks of the week. And this time, Thomas, I'm going to let you go first. What's your pick this week?
All right, my pick this week is for the electronic lover in your life, if you would like to, an Arduino Uno starter kit. And it's now I'm going to say there are knockoff versions on Amazon as well. So if you want to go, the one that I got was like half the price of the Arduino starter kit, and it was called Elegoo. But I do like the idea of supporting the actual company that made the whole concept of microcontrollers really take off. So the starter kit itself comes with a chipboard that is programmable, but it's a circuits and electronics primer set, basically. It gives you a whole bunch of wires, a whole bunch of LEDs, resistors. It'll come with a starter kit package of lessons, and it'll teach you how to put all of these things together. And it's great for hobbyists, for enthusiasts, anybody who's interested in robotics. If you're interested in just learning about a little bit about how electricity works, this is a great way to get started.
I had a great idea for an Arduino project the other day on my podcast I did with my wife Melanie on Raising the Bets. I said, what I want to do is I want to find an old clock radio, the kind with the flippy letters, and I want to hollow it out, keep the clock part of it working, hollow out the radio part, put an Arduino in there, that when the alarm goes off, plays the bit from Groundhog Day whenever the clock, whenever he woke up. That's awesome. the morning zoo show.
That'd be great, yeah.
That's an Arduino project. She was like, "What is an Arduino?" And now I can show her this.
Now, you show her this. But it's got all sorts of great stuff. It has a humidity sensor in it. It has a distance sensor. It's got a couple of motors. It's got loads of LEDs, a bunch of different tilt switches and things like that. I think, for me, I got it just wanting to play with electronic stuff, but now I'm thinking of projects where I can use it in our garden to make sure that our garden stays watered. You just put the humidity sensor out there, you run it to an Arduino board, and then you have a pump set up on it that it can pump water automatically if the humidity inside the soil is too low.
Wow.
And it's just little stuff like that it's really easy to run. And if you're ever wondering, okay, well, what could I actually do with this? Just go on YouTube and search for DIY electronics projects.
Yeah.
And there are tons.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it comes with an Arduino project book that would give you all kinds of things to start with. That's always my thing is like, what would I do? Like the clock radio thing came to me, but even something practical, interesting. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
no, it walks you through using each one of the different components and then maybe how to wire a couple of them together. And the one thing I will say is that you have to learn a little bit of C programming language to be able to do more advanced things. But it's really not that hard to find ways to use it online, and it's really just the very basics of learning C. So you don't have to like go really super complicated with it. You just have to learn what you need for the Arduino itself.
It's a good way to get into it too.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fantastic.
And you could probably find snippets that you can just borrow from other places and and
Right,
use.
exactly.
So, yeah. Awesome, that's cool. Jack, what is your pick this week?
All right, my pick of the week is the Reaper Digital Audio Workstation. It's kind of like Pro Tools, but it's a lot cheaper. It's $60 if you're using it for personal use, and then $225 for the commercial license. And you can do things. You can record on it. I'm actually using it right now to record because anything else crashes my computer. It also has a lot of MIDI functionality, so if you have a MIDI controller like a keyboard or whatever, you can plug it into it and control different virtual instruments that way. And it's got a bunch of different plugins for effects and things like that. And I use it for recording music in addition to just doing audio like this podcast. So it's really good. It's really cheap. And the nice thing is the free trial is unlimited. It just does this thing where it pops up and says it's been however many days since you've paid for it. So if you want to be, less than
good old WinRAR.
Yeah, exactly.
WinRAR model.
But for $60, it's really worth it.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, you could edit audio with this. You could edit a podcast with this. It's multi-track audio recording and editing. So I use Adobe Audition, but that's what I know. But this would be a nice way for someone to get into this sort of thing inexpensively. That's a good one. So my pick is a security product called the Yubii, and I'm picking it even though I'm not quite sold on its as it being the end all and be all of it. I'm still figuring it out a bit. So what is the Yubii? It is a USB device. It connects by USB. It can connect via Bluetooth, depending on which one you get. Lightning, USB-C, USB-A. And what it is, it's another way of verifying your identity for passwords. So, for example, I can set it up so that when I reboot my Mac, when it gets to the password screen, it says insert your Yubii key into the USB port and then type in your PIN. So it's like a smart card. You've seen some of those things in big business and government agencies. Then I can also use it with 1Password. So whenever I launch 1Password, it'll ask me to insert my Yubii key. I put it in the port, and then it has a little like a place to put your finger. It's not fingerprint ID. It just wants you to touch it so that it knows that there's a physical person there. It's not a virtual copy. So you touch it, and it verifies that it's in the computer, and it unlocks 1Password. They also have versions for like for your iPhone if you have a Lightning port. So they have other ones that are NFC, so you can just hold it up against the device. That doesn't yet work with iPhone. They're working on that, but they hope to get to that point very soon. So, having used it now for a couple weeks, one of the things is you always want two in case you lose one. You set up two, put one of them in a very safe place. But I don't necessarily find it to provide that much more security because it always offers the backup. Like if you don't have the Yubii key, you can also do your two-factor authentication through the Google Authenticator or Authy, one-time code thing. Which I'm already doing that. So why is this better? So I'm very interested in the idea of having even more security through a physical device that I have to have on me, which means that other people can't get into it. But we're also still kind of worried about losing that physical device, so we still have to have that way of getting in without it. And so that's where we are with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this company goes. I was actually just looking at it the other day because the government is requiring all federal contractors in the next couple of years to have two-factor authentication on all your systems if you're working with the government. Oh. So that's been something we've been having to look at. So I was actually looking at this the other day, so I have to dig into it more and see what you think of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll be interested to hear what you come up with. We should continue to talk about this on this podcast because this sort of thing, as it becomes more, it's not mainstream at all. It's just not there yet. But as it becomes more mainstream, and it will, I think, as it gets out into further places, I'd like to be able to talk about it more and how this could help with security, because we need to improve security. All of these passwords we've got are not doing it. Like having 1,000 different letter number symbol passwords. The need for a password manager itself is indicative that the system is kind of broken. So we need to get to a place where we're secure without having to have all of these random passwords and some sort of biometrics, which is this kind of could be connected to, or some kind of key, which is what this literally is, might be part of that solution. So, all right. That's some good picks again. I'm very happy with those. So before we sign off, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including John W., SR, Joseph G., Burke I., and Francesco M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And if you're listening to the Secrets of Technology, I stumble over that, and you're not aware of our other shows, the StarQuest Network has a bunch of shows on a bunch of different topics. Go to sqpn.com/shows, and you'll see all of them there. We cover a variety of topics related to pop culture and the intersection of pop culture and faith. And so you might find something else you like there. If you have not yet done so, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, Spotify, or on our YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications, where our YouTube channel is SQPN. Until next time, Thomas Sanherho, thank you for joining me in sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Thanks for having me.
And Jack Barazzini, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.